Hello, welcome everybody to this live sew and chat. You can see I'm in a slightly different part of my studio today, and I'm also actually speaking to a camera which is behind me. So I hope it's okay because I'm going to show you the double screen. What I'm going to show you today is actually how I stitch this specific collar. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'd love to know whether you're thinking of making this top, or whether you're making a collar at the moment, or what you hate about stitching, or what's your favorite part. I spent all day yesterday choosing a appropriate check, because if you're my membership, we had a whole tutorial on how to choose check and stripe fabrics, how to cut them and how to stitch them, because choosing check fabric is actually really tricky if you're cutting on the bias, which I am. And hello Laura, thank you so much for joining me. I think you might be making that collar, aren't you? I'd love to know where you are. Well, this collar is actually cut on the bias. If you want to watch it, there is a link in the description on how to do your own. I've put it on my website, so you can feel free to make your own and then watch this, and feel free to comment if you have any questions. I'm just double checking. I put it in the chat. I haven't, but I will put it in. I will put it in the description as soon as I finish this live stream. There's never enough time. And hello, Yvonne. Thank you very much for joining me from Bermuda. I can see this for sort of sailing summer theme as well, and like maybe a nice cotton. But this is actually cut on the bias. So the body's on the straight, so it works really well for smocks or tops like this, or dresses with relaxed. It'd be really beautiful in a knit fabric as well, like a really stable knit. But then the collar is cut on the bias, so it gives you that stretch. You can do it up and down, put it on and off. But then rather than like a normal roll collar where it's just stitched into a round neck, this has got this V-neck, which gives more of a sporty feel, rather than our classic roll collar is very Jackie Onassis 1960s vintage. I think it still has that sort of it's very elegant, casual, but it is of American. I always think like French is just the pure elegance quite often from that time, and American vintage fashion from that time. It's still really beautiful, but it's sort of slightly more for women who go out and do stuff. I always think of American fashion like of that time. So I might be wrong. Do feel free to agree with me or agree. But anyway, we're sort of different styles, and I think this is a slightly more sporty version of the roll collar. But what I'm going to do today, I've cut everything out, which took ages because I'm working in a check, so I thought I'd better do best practice and pattern match everything. So what we have is this check, which looks very muted on here, but it's actually bright. It's got a bright orange highlight, and then this is bright orange in real life. This is a real citron yellow, and this is a petrol. I don't know, but I think it might be. Is it Davidson tartan? But what I've done, I've cut everything out, so you can see I'm going to actually go on the solo for a while. And can you let me know how my sound is? Because you can see this is actually behind me, so my sound is being recorded from behind. So I hope it's big and loud enough, otherwise I'll turn to the side. But you can see this one has a center front seam here. And I think because this is a corduroy which has a stripe, if I would have just cut it as one, you would have had the stripe just going one way. So I put a center front and center back seam, so it looks like a chevron. And thank you, Laura, about the sound. On this one, because it's got a check and I'm doing on the true bias, and it is a true check, which means it's squares, I can actually cut it as one piece. So that's going to be my front and back. And what I've done as well, you might notice that this stands up really nicely. This one is unlined, so this one I literally just used the self on the fold for softer, floppier look. This one I'm actually doing fused or interfaced. So what I normally quite like a stitch in interfacing, but this time I've used a, I'll hold it up. I'm going to put on the other camera so you can see it. So can you see this has got a really nice, it's a slightly fluffy interfacing, an iron-on interfacing, but you can see it's still got the bias, so it stretches. And the reason I used a iron-on interfusing is because it's on the fold. And what I didn't want to risk if it's a sew-in interfacing, and this is one piece, I didn't want it to suddenly like fall down or something or get stuck over time and then it's not working anymore. So if you had a center front seam and the back seam, then I think I would probably use a stitching or sew-in interfacing. But for this one I used an iron interfacing, and also it's a bit faster. But just make sure you choose a good quality one, and ideally you would want a woven interfacing so you have the bias. You don't want like one of those cardboard interfacings. And Laura is saying, where do you get your fusing from, please? I can only get Visaline here. I actually, my craft shop of all places has a really good choice. I think it's all I think you actually pronounce it violin, isn't it? It's all violin as well, but there's lots of different qualities of that as well. And if it's an independent craft shop, I always found they're actually really happy to order something in sometimes. But mine has about a few different choices. So if I just need a sort of normal quality, then I go from there. And otherwise, if you want something really specific, the best place is McCollis and Wallace. I'm going to put it in the chat. McCulloch, I think it's like that. It's in London. If you put this in, hopefully, and fabric or interfacing, it should come up. Yes, I definitely misspelled it. I just looked at it or mistyped. They have an amazing array of couture canvas, horsehair canvas, all the interfacing. And I know, Laura, you're making a tailor jacket, so they're definitely worth having a look at. And Laura has used them before. For specific specialist interfacing. They are expensive, but then I think if you're making something special, you know, you don't want the fusing can make or break a gown. Because I want to show you this. Can you see how nicely that stands up? And I go on about this quite a lot in my tutorials sometimes, so I hope it's not too boring. But if I show you the normal one, so this is, if I do it in the bias, this is my front. Can you see if I do this and this, it starts sort of, if I give it a bit of wobble, it starts collapsing. Well, this just stands really nicely. So if I make this collar without proper interfusing, it becomes like that, which is fine, but for this I want sort of quite a sculptural 1960s feel. So there's two ways of stitching this collar. The first one is that you just construct your collar separately, and then you stitch your collar together on the side seam, you stitch your sleeve and your shoulders together on the front and back, and then you just insert your whole collar in one go. However, the most trickiest part of this collar is this bit and this bit, but this even more because it's so visible. So as I'm using a very visible check fabric, what I'm going to do is stitch my front collar to my front bodice first and do the same on the back, and then in the end I will stitch my shoulder and side collar in one long stitch, which means I have a little bit of, I have to be careful where the shoulders meet. There has to be super precise, but that's not as noticeable as my front. So let me find my front collar. Double check that's my back bodice. And what I do when I just notch everything. So you can see this is my front armhole because it's only got one notch. And then again, I've got one notch on my neckline. I just realized what I would probably do next time. I would fuse that spot here because this is like that. So I need to insert my collar into there. So what I probably will do, I will show you how to stitch a collar, and then after the live stream, I will stitch a little bit of fusing on there just to reinforce it a little bit. So you can see that's very nicely nearly perfectly pattern match. And what I always do if I do a right angle corner where I want to match both of them, I'm going to show you on the other screen again. And do feel free to ask any questions, or if you're making this collar, if you have fabric questions or anything. So I need to turn exactly at the tip. So what I do is I actually put my ruler on, or you can do it while you still have your pattern on. But I'm going to, can you see I've laid it on, so I got the 1 centimeter seam allowance here. Sorry, I need to move it up a bit. 1 second. Yes, so you can see I've got the 1 centimeter seam allowance here and then the other one there. So I'm just double checking, making extra sure. Then I'm just going to put a pin on. And you can use a mark, you know, a choker, a mark, a thread. On a fabric like that, a pin is fine. But if it's like a really slippery fabric, I would probably use a thread. So again, I'm marking my centimeter seam allowance, and then I can also see that's my centimeter seam allowance, and that should be, if I cut it out correctly, exactly here. So I will have to stitch incredibly carefully. And I also actually I want to have this on top when I'm stitching, because that's the one where I've used the end line of my orange check as the border. So that's my seam allowance like that. So I want it to look like this. So for my first live sewing, I haven't chosen a very easy one because that's quite... I hope it goes well. Otherwise there's always the unpicker. So what I'm going to do is take my needle out again, and then I can line it up, because it's always, can you see, this looks like it's far more than a centimeter. This looks like something has gone wrong because it's such a long distance from here to here. But of course we got the seam allowance going like that and that, so it is actually deeper at that point. But the problem is if you don't mark these two spots, your eye naturally wants you to line it up, and your eye can basically cheat you. So, and then I should have some notches here. And I apologize, I've been deadheading in the garden and making grape juice because one of our neighbors has a grapevine. So I picked 2 massive buckets, but stained my hands. So you can see I lined up my notches, and this should all be perfectly cut. There shouldn't be no ease. So with stuff like that, you have to be really careful. You're cutting out really precisely, and then hopefully this should match up as well. And that's cutting out in paper, and also of course when you're cutting out the fabric, so both times. Okay, so that's pretty good. What I'm going to do now is turn over to the machine so you don't have to see my back anymore. Okay, so what I will do stitch really slowly. And what I'm going to do, because this machine is really loud, I'm going to turn the sound off in a second, because otherwise it's going to be too loud. So can you see I've just did some, just with my by hand, I just stitched the first two, and I'm going to just back stitch quickly because I want to be like super careful. And now I'm going to just mute it and stitch the first thing. And you can see I just stitched over my pin, and I know there's two schools of thoughts. I've maybe broken 2 or 3 pins in my sewing life. If you're going super fast, it's a bit dangerous. But if you're doing precision stuff, every time you stop to pull out your pin, you can have a slight wobble. So the line becomes slightly less straight. So I just like to stitch over my pins, but I use super fine pins to. If you have chunkier pins, that can be an issue. Okay, I'm coming to the corner. So I'm actually, what I do now, you can see on my thumb on my right hand side, I'm going to make my stitch length shorter, which is of course a pain if you have to unpick. So if you're sort of a beginner, stay with the same length, because if you want to unpick a narrower stitch and you're unpicking a corner which might fray, it's a real pain. So you can then always overstitch it in a shorter stitch. But I like to do it, it's the same on a shawl collar and stuff. Whenever I have to do a corner, I like to stitch with a shorter length. And you can see I'm doing a mixture of foot and hand. And if I wasn't filming it, I would be having my eye right next to where my needle is. There we are. So fingers crossed. So that is my corner. What I now need to do is match this to this. Ooh. Can you see my fusing has come undone as well? So I need to redo it later. But yes, I need to match these two, which is a bit of an issue because I don't, but opposite directions. So what you need to do is make sure your needle is down and secure. You lift up your foot, and when you swivel it around, you can take out your pin now. And then you snip underneath, which is why I should have fused it, and I will fuse it later. I would just put like a dot this big around the stitching. So I have basically lifted it up and snipped all the way to it. And again, if I like having a needle down, because that means you start in exactly the same position as you have finished. However, again, if you're doing this for the first time, I would probably backstitch, take it off, turn it over and do it, because that way you can see exactly what you're doing, because you need to stitch exactly to the needle but not past it. And what I can now do is, can you see, I'm basically pulling my bottom fabric forward and then pulling all the excess to the back, because what I don't want to do is catch it. And now I need to take my needle up a bit, just so it's not too thick. And I can now pull over my top fabric and lay it on again. I'm going to pin it at my notch again. There we go. And now I'm just double checking. I'm folding over the fabric here, so I can now see that everything is pulled out, because what can happen is that it gets caught and then you end up with a puckered front. And if I quickly show you, I go very close to the camera. You can see it happened a little bit here. I've got a tiny pucker there because this is sort of my variable trowel as such on my sample. So it's not perfect, and also corduroy. It's like velvet. It looks nice, but it's not the best fabric to use precision sewing as that. So the tartan, which is a wool, is actually perfect for stuff like that, because it just has that little bit of ease that you can fudge your mistakes. If you, for example, did this, like a corduroy which slips and doesn't have a lot of ease, things go wrong. And alternatively, if you use something like a vinyl, so maybe zero ease, you have to be cutting hasn't just to be good, it has to be perfect. So and also you will see every mistake. Well, like something like this wool is actually perfect for starting out. So I'm going to go back to the machine now. Put my foot down. And now I've done the first few stitches, I'm going to go up to my normal stitch length. And I'm going to turn the camera off so I can go a little bit faster. Also the microphone. Okay, you can see I'm there. But is it slightly disconcerting? I think that tape is slightly wrong. I will actually check it after this live stream, because that tape is supposed to be exactly centimeters, but I think I've gone slightly off array, because as I was following my stitch line, it was slightly more than a centimeter. But of course, it could also be my cutting out. I'm just doing my first check. Yeah, it definitely meant my line there isn't perfect. But let's check the corner, because that's what I was worried about. Ooh, it's pretty good. What do you think? Let me know in the chat. I think that's acceptable. So I will now, or after the live stream, I will get a little bit of interfusing again and just interfuse this area. And what I probably do, because this is like a 3/4 of a circle. So I cut out a circle, chop out, fold it in half, fold it again, and then just chop off a 1/4. And then I will glue that on here. And then once I've done it, and I know it's secure, then I will snip a little bit more, because can you see it's not snipped exactly to the point. It's snipped close enough, but I could easily turn it very neatly. As you can see, that's completely flat. That's better than my last one. But I can snip a tiny bit closer and release it even more. And then if you go along here, I think this is there's actually going up 1/2 mil, but because I'm having blue next to it, it's not as noticeable. That's okay. So you can see I think that's the better side. Oh no, that's where I started. Can you see here? It's slightly gone off. So I'm actually going to restitch it. 1 mil in and then 2 mil there. Yes, and I can see that's a bit narrower. And I do that quite often. When I start stitching, my seam allowance isn't perfect. And normally, you know, for a lot of garments, unless they're very fitted or pure precision like this, it doesn't matter, you know. But this is very naughty to say it doesn't matter, but you can get away with it. But here I need to have it perfect all the way. So I'm thinking, is that right? So let me have a look. I slightly overstitched it there. Oh, I've stitched basically. This is very like, how much of a perfectionist are you? This highlight stripe is 4 threads wide. So I can see the 4 threads all the way down here. So that's all perfect. But here, if you want to be a proper perfectionist, I actually caught it a little bit. Can you see? but I think that's good enough. So this is the front done. The back you can do exactly the same. And there's your front neck done. And hello, Rebecca. No worries, you're late. We just it's my first live sewing, which is slightly it was a bit stressy to set up this camera. I think let me know what you think of this camera setup, because I was talking to Beth on Instagram the other day how hard it is to stitch on camera, but I think that works relatively well. I think we need the light needs slight improvement because we got a shadow from the phone and stuff. But for first, it's hopefully all right. And yes, Rebecca, I've just done this neck, so you can see it's not finished. And I will definitely restitch where I started. Where did I start? I started here because that's sort of noticeable enough it would annoy me. But the other side is fine. So it's going to look like that. Oh my goodness. Okay, I've just noticed something. Can you notice something? I thought I lined the front up completely to a center of something, but this is actually not an even check. So when I was cutting it out originally, oh goodness, originally I was going to use this as my center, but that's a really narrow stripe. I was thinking, oh, if I'm slightly off this that's as my center front, it's going to look really wonky. But look, so oh, I'm really clever. I'm using a really chunky stripe, which is why I always say I can use something chunky where if you're off half a mil, it won't matter. But look at this, it's not a even stripe. And I think this is where, you know, even if I follow my own best advice, I still get things wrong sometimes. So you can see this is slightly to the side. So I've got a point here and here. I think I will lay it on properly and see whether I can live with that. Alternatively, what I might do is quickly unpick this and then move it to the red. But I'm not sure I like I might have to use it to the yellow. Because I wanted the red highlight there and I wanted the contrast there. I've done it sort of nicely. Everything is perfect there, but can you see a red and a yellow? So I guess you can say they're sort of, the black one is a repeat and then you have an alternative repeat. But yes, that's slightly embarrassing. And let me have a look at the back quickly. So Yvonne, yes, Yvonne says perfect, and Rebecca, I think that the neckline pushing in is perfect. How I cut it out is slightly wrong. I've done the same with the back. I think that it might just be me, but sometimes what I do is I knew what the repeat was. Then I had to solve as I was cutting off, and what I sometimes forget, and that's generally my life story, is that when I don't go back and double check, but what I'm now doing isn't undoing the first rule I set myself. So I've got it on both, so I'm going to actually put it in the mirror and see whether it's as noticeable as I think it is right now, because otherwise I have to have one of the highlight stripes here, which I didn't really want to. So I might just try to live with it. Yes, I will have a look. Or whether I add some. Yes, we will see. Maybe I shouldn't have pointed it out and I could have gotten away with it. I hope I'm not the only one who does silly stuff like that sometimes. Anyway, this is how to sew a perfectly matching geometric collar and how not to cut out your check fabric. But also, this is something I said in the membership tutorial. Fabrics like these are actually really hard. So ideally, I would have chosen I had a really beautiful navy and green, a single check. But the problem is that it wasn't square. And it wouldn't have worked for the collar very well. So this one, I thought, ooh, it's not. It's very complicated, but it's perfectly square. But then I don't. The solution would be to either use your yellow or the red as center, and that could work quite nicely. But yes, it's not. Oh well, you know what I might do, depending on how much fabric I've got. What would be nice if you actually had the red stripe going out from there. So I might do it for the front. I think the back I leave. I can live as a really badly mismatched back. I don't really care what people say after I've seen me. But coming on, I think I'm going to move that. So I'm going to very carefully unpick that corner. And as soon as I unpicked it, I'm going to fuse it. Because that's going to... Actually, no, I'm going to replace it. So that's fine. So I'm going to just unpick it. And then redo the front. And Yvonne is saying, I'm so glad I'm not the only one who does those things. Yes. And I think it's also one of those things that I say that quite often, that when you're making clothes for yourself, you're doing all the jobs. So normally I would design it or pattern cut it. I would tell people how it has to be matched. And if you're laying it on paper, you can like really plan it. But then it'd be sent off to somebody who does it all day. They've cut out fabrics. It's a specific profession. And they would find out exactly the perfect layout plan and how to make sure this doesn't happen. So yes. That's the problem with also trying to fit in things like that in your daily life. But the collar method still work. I hope you found it helpful. Is that how you do your normal little collars, the corners? I'd like to know. And then I will get my unpicker out after the live stream and unpick it. And if you want to learn how to draft this collar, the tutorial is on my website, which I will have put in the description right after the live stream. Yes, and it's less than 10 minutes. So it's a great tutorial where you can add this collar to any top and you don't need a pattern as such. You can use a sewing pattern. You just need your head circumference measurements. So let me know how you stitch these collars. Let me have a look. Where's my quick unpicker? I'm gonna get it while I see how you stitch this collar. Let's see what you're saying. Oh, Laura's saying, yes, I do the corners the same way. I always pack it all through. Yes, it's, you know what, as I was doing it, I was thinking, that's the thing which is going to go wrong live on camera, because it happens really easily, that you get a little pucker. What I normally do on this one, I had to put the basically the pattern which has the right angle or the smaller angle on it on top, so I could see the line. But what I find easy in general is if you have the one where the cutout is narrower, if you have that on top, because then you can slit it open and then make sure you're moving it out of the way, because that's where you slit it open, that always gets caught otherwise. Really easy. And I think with shawl collars, it's that corner that just makes, like, shawl collars are beautiful, but that corner is so tricky. And I was thinking, because I need to, on Monday, I'm going to sit down and plan exactly November. I've got the rough idea of what to do. But did you know that it's been 5 years? No more. I think it's been 7 or 8 years since I did the first shawl collar tutorial. So I thought it might be quite nice. And it was in November, because I did it for my teaching job, and we always did we did like a 3-week project to start the year, which was really good fun, where I got students to make something in, I think we had 4 hours. So we used to draft the shawl collar and then cut it on fabric and stitch it together. And that's people who might have never used a sewing machine before. So I did the video for that, my first shawl collar, so students could watch it beforehand and had at least a little bit of understanding what pattern cutting is. And then they had like an hour to do the drafting, and then we used to cut it out, and then after break stitch it all up, and everybody always used to get a trial by the end. So it used to be a really great project, which is why I love the shawl collar. But the thing, if you're a beginner, with a shawl collar, of course, you've got exactly the same stitching process at the corner and on the shoulder. That always goes wrong. So the drafting is actually much easier than the stitching. And yes, and you can just sort of, I always knew it'd be at least 1 or 2 where if you have never done it before, kudos to them doing it on a sewing machine. You always get like something like that where it gets completely caught up. But it's a really good thing as well, because when you learn, you can unpick it and you can fix it, which is what I love about fashion, like that you can just unpick something and make it good again. And yes, I am using my scissors. I actually prefer scissors for unpicking, and I normally have some finer embroidery scissors I use exactly for that purpose. But if you have a really sharp pair of shears, it works as well. And I think it also works because this is quite a thick fabric. So if this was a silk, I would use a pin or quick unpick. But for thicker fabrics, I quite dislike using my scissors, because this wool is, I think it's a proper tartan wool, so it's really chunky and nice. So, and it's very fast. So yes, so I have now my perfect collar again. So what I'm going to do now is cut this out again, and if I show you what I'm thinking of doing. Have a look. I am going to attempt, if I pin it together, actually that doesn't work either. I'll show you in a second. It has to be like that. Actually, I'm going to show you. You can tell me what you think of it. I'm not sure I like it. And that's not a perfect pin down, but the rough idea should work. So what I was thinking, because I have to have either the red or orange highlights, or the yellow one as a highlight. So what I was thinking of doing is, what's happened here? Is to do it like, nothing's going wrong. But they're meeting like that. The hyacinth becomes a bit fuzzy. Not fuzzy, it becomes a bit busy. So the other option is, if I'm going to switch on the camera again. This one's I can show you. Back. So what I had thought originally, oh my goodness. Do quite like this new camera layout. I had to put the camera on my shelf next to it, because otherwise this is like a really old machine, so it's like so loud, it makes everything vibrate. So what do you think? I think this is too busy. And I think the problem is that if I, let me get another piece. Because of course it would be on both sides, wouldn't it? So it would look something. I don't like that. I will have to move it further up. So what you would want to do is have it like that, but then it gives you like a weird shape, because of course the square diagonally is bigger. So I'm not sure. What do you think? I think it looks a bit funny. I think it's too much going on. Also, of course, that doesn't work because I've got, sorry, it will have to be something like this, because I can't, what I'm doing is adding a seam. I can't do that. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work either. So I do think is I have to, actually could be beautiful, but maybe I think that's a bit too much. So I think what I'm going to do is use the yellow check for it. So if I can show you that. So it will look more like this. Which is why I chose the black one in the beginning, because it's all of those are a bit too. Oh, I think that'd be okay. Let's have a look. So it's like but I think it actually distracts from that point. So what I might do is, because what I quite like is that it's just like, it becomes like a highlight that, so I wonder if it's something like this, so it comes at the bottom. And this is what all I did earlier, this is why I chose the black one, which I think still actually done here shows it off the most. It's very tricky. What happens if this might be the best. So that it looks like a Y shape that way, doesn't it? So that might be quite nice. Anyway, you can see I've been doing this for quite a while. I might pin it on and try out different options I can do. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. And I will update you on Instagram to see how it all turns out. I might actually go back to original tartan position, see if I can live with it not being symmetrical across the body, because I think it will give you the nicest front. Or I might have to add a center front seam, because when I can just mirror that, so that might be my solution after all. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and I will be back next Thursday. And I would love some feedback, actually, what you think of something like this, or whether you prefer 10-minute drafting tutorials, all that sort of stuff, or maybe shorter sewing tips. Let me know in the comments below, or you can send me a message on Instagram or something like that. Yeah, but anyway, for now, thank you so much for joining me. Good night if you're in the UK, and otherwise enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye, everybody.